Hi, I'm Beth.
And I'm Marty. Beth and I host a TV show for students produced by the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum called STEM in 30.
Hey everyone, I'm Christopher Williams, the STEM Education Specialist here at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and today we're coming to you live from inside the Oprah Winfrey Theater here at the museum.
Today we will be joined by SpaceX Crew-1. A year ago today, they launched into space and spent 6 months on the International Space Station.
We want you to participate in today's program. Wherever you're watching, put those questions down in the comments section. Also, be sure to give a follow to the National Air and Space Museum and National Museum of African American History and Culture, as well as STEM in 30 on social media, and let us know where you're watching from. We'll be doing shout outs throughout the program.
We also have multiple schools watching from inside of our virtual classroom, such as Miss Little's science class from Visitation School in Minnesota, Miss Coates' class from East Montgomery Elementary in Clarksville, Tennessee, and Miss Norris's class in Greeley, Colorado.
Also joining us are Mr. Bogdan and Miss Jackson's classes from Buffalo Trail Elementary School, Ms. Thornburg's class from the Barstow School, and Mrs. Reed's class at Indian River Middle School.
We've also got Mrs. Guerin's class from Encompass Heights Elementary in Colorado Springs, Colorado, Mrs. Mindell's class from Kearney Middle School in Kearney, Missouri, and Mrs. Kinsey's class at Providence Elementary in Fairfax, Virginia. Thanks to all of our schools joining us today.
If you didn't hear your school's name called, keep listening throughout the program. But now, let's meet the astronauts.
He became a NASA astronaut in 2009 and served as the commander of the SpaceX Crew-1 mission. Please welcome Mike Hopkins.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Hi there. He was a naval aviator and became an astronaut in 2013. He also served as the pilot for this mission, and this was his first time traveling to space. Everyone, meet Victor Glover.
He became an astronaut for Japan's Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA, in 1998. Please welcome Soichi Noguchi.
She became a NASA astronaut in 2004 and served as a mission specialist for the SpaceX Crew-1 mission. Everyone, please welcome Shannon Walker. Now that we have the whole crew on the stage, we are going to let them tell you a little bit about their mission.
Well, hello everyone. Yes, as you heard today, we're going to talk about the Crew-1 mission to the International Space Station, where we were part of Expedition 64 and 65. But before you can launch into space, you actually have to go through a lot of astronaut school. And so for Victor and I, that started back in August of 2018 when we were first assigned to this particular mission. Now, what do you do in astronaut school? Well, first of all, you've got to learn about the International Space Station, all of the systems on board, the different science that you might be doing while you're on board, how you maintain it. You also have to practice going on spacewalks. You have to practice how you use the robotic arm while you're on board. You have to practice exercise. That sounds like a lot of fun, but we have some special equipment on board that we use when we exercise, so we have to know how to use it and also maintain it. And so Victor and I were doing that, but we were also learning about our very new vehicle. This was going to be one of the first flights of this vehicle with humans on board. In fact, it was the second flight of a Crew Dragon vehicle going to the International Space Station. And so Victor and I spent a lot of time learning about that vehicle, helping not design it, but help test it, verify it, make sure everything was working good on it, as well as training on that vehicle. But then later, the crew got a little bit bigger, and Shannon and Soichi came on board. When they came on board kind of late in the training flow, they joined us in March of, yeah, there you go. You can see them in the training flow there. But they came in about March of 2020, which meant we didn't have a lot of time. But fortunately, these two are very experienced astronauts, And so they just came in with a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge, and we were very quickly able to gel as a crew. And you saw some of those pictures there as we were getting closer and closer to launch, where we were in our suits that we wore on the SpaceX Crew Dragon. And those are the same suits that we wore when we launched, the same suits that we wore when we came back home. But that took a lot of time, a lot of effort. As astronauts, as I mentioned, you're in astronaut school a lot. That means tests a lot. We always were getting graded. But at the end of the day, they do a great job, both NASA and SpaceX, of getting us ready for this very special moment of being on the launch pad.
Absolutely. And so after all that training, over 2 years in some cases, training to go and work and live in space, and also getting your family ready for you to go work and live in space, then it's launch day. And we get out to Kennedy Space Center, and we went out to the launch pad on this very special day and saw the rocket standing there on the pad. And this time, it's not a drill, it's not a simulation. You're going out there in order to go to low Earth orbit, to go to space. And so the vehicle is there, ready to go, and they strapped us in, that amazing closeout team, and they got us into the vehicle. And once they were all away, we did something very unique. We pumped the rocket full of fuel. That's when they put the rocket fuel in, and we could hear that. Lots of sounds and feelings. There's vibrations in the rocket stack. And once it was full of rocket fuel, which was actually just about 2 minutes prior to launch, the countdown continues. It's full of rocket fuel, and then you hear those last few seconds. 3, 2, 1, and those 9 Merlin engines light, and we feel like we're jumping off the pad and we're going skyward. After about a minute as we are going uphill, we reach maximum dynamic pressure when the forces on the outside of the rocket are the greatest. So they throttle down the engines, and it feels like you're driving in your car and somebody hits the brakes and you slow down a little bit. And then after we pass through that regime, a few seconds later, they throttle up. And when you hear them say throttle up, you felt pushed back in your seat and those engines go back to full power and you keep going uphill. About 2.5 minutes into it, then we're going to staging, and the first stage is out of fuel, and we actually separate from the first stage. And if you've seen the SpaceX booster, it's pretty neat. They can fly back to land or keep going out into the water and do a burn that brings them back to a ship, and they land on the ground so that they can use it again. And so that process starts as the second stage lights, and we continue to hurl skyward, actually beyond the sky into low Earth orbit. And for about the next 6 minutes, we continue to accelerate, starting right at about 1 G, peaking up to about 4.5 Gs, accelerating the entire time. Your chest is heavy, your face is being pushed back as you're pushed back into your seat. And when we hit the 100-kilometer point, you see lots of fist bumping and celebrating that we know we made it into the line of space. And then after about 9 minutes and 200 kilometers of altitude gain, we went from the east coast of the United States to just past the west coast of Europe, and now we're in orbit. And we made it safely to orbit, and we were happy we could exhale, and we knew that about a day later we would be docking to the International Space Station.
Yeah, so all that training, wonderful launch, now we're on space station. Now what? Well, the first thing to know about being in space, since we go around the Earth once every 90 minutes, so we're going pretty fast. 17,500 miles an hour, pretty darn fast. But, so since you're going around so much, you got to pick your time zone. So the space station operates on Greenwich Mean Time. So
Set your watches.
Set your watches for Greenwich Mean Time. Each day, we wake up about 6 in the morning, and overnight, the ground has uplinked our schedule for the day, and that tells us what we're going to do. Sometimes we're going to be doing science, sometimes we're going to be doing maintenance, sometimes we're going to be doing spacewalks, usually we're doing science, and usually we're doing maintenance. And so we wake up and we figure out what the ground wants us to do. And after about, we have some breakfast, we get dressed, actually we get dressed and then we have breakfast, and then we start our day. And so science on the space station is the main activity we have up there. That is why we have a space station. And so we can be doing all kinds of science. Sometimes we were examining worms in space. Sometimes we were flying around little satellites. Sometimes we were growing plants. Hopper did a great job at growing some plants in space, and so just all kinds of things. Tasty plants, yes. I think while we were up there, we probably had something like 150 or more experiments that were being worked on. So we were really, really busy with the science and the maintenance. And so Soichi, tell us about your time.
Well, obviously, science and spacewalks, everything is important, but we cannot do alone. We need a good help from the ground. Of course, the control center helping 24/7, watch us doing things. And the other important thing is bring stuff up to space, meaning delivery service. We won't call it the delivery, it's a space station resupply. And every couple of months, they're going to bring up a new vehicle, new capsule, bringing lots of stuff. New science, spacewalk materials, and the space food, you name it. So food is very important. So when the stuff comes, you are talking about hundreds of suitcases and bringing stuff. We bring a new stuff to International Space Station. And we're bringing the science result because they are waiting, all the researchers are waiting on the ground to see the outcome of the great science. And so you're seeing this is a spacewalk. Hopper and Ike are ready to go out, and Shannon and I are helping them. And all those spacesuit and the materials we're bringing from the ground. So resupply is very important, and those results going back is also very important. And one of the items that resupply vehicle bring us is a present. Obviously, we are starting to come to the holiday season. We celebrate holiday, of course, on the ground, in space, and we celebrate Christmas, we celebrate New Year,
Celebrate
and
birthdays.
of course, a holiday always comes with a nice present. And today, I happen to have one of the very good presents from my crew, and
Awesome.
I just want to show you. This is actually the present from our backup crew. Backup crew is very important.
Yeah.
They help us all the way going up to space. And this is from our good friend, Cheryl Ingrid, who is going up next spring. But do you know what this is? This is very, very important in space. We use it every day.
Multiple
And
times.
during your space stay, you would drink like this. This is aluminum pouch. This happens to be a grateful drink, but this could be Ike's coffee. It could be a Hopper's tea, but everything goes inside because it could be very cold, it could be very hot. So it goes in, it has a Velcro tape, you can stick it on it, and just make sure it doesn't go somebody else has a name on it as well. And if somebody lost a spoon, here is a spare spoon inside. And it's linear. So,
Backup spoon.
so this is very helpful. And this is, again, this is a nice present from our crew, and shows a very great friendship. You know, the space station runs on the science, but the friendship actually drive us forward. So again, we are having a very good time. So Hopper, close it away.
You bet. So if you guys can't tell, space flight's a lot of fun.
It's fun.
You see a lot of smiles up here because it was truly an incredible mission. It is a lot of work, there's no doubt about that as well. It's a lot of important work because the science that we're doing is going to help one of you someday maybe put a foot on Mars. Maybe 2 feet, actually. Take them both.
Take
Hopefully
both
both
of them.
feet.
Both feet.
But maybe allow you to walk on Mars someday. And so that's a big reason why we are there on board the International Space Station. But at some point, it's time to come home.
Sadly.
And so for us, we had we got to come home at about day 167 or so, and 168. And we undocked from the International Space Station, that same vehicle that Victor talked about we were in when we got to the International Space Station. It stayed docked that whole time, and now we're getting back into it, and we come home. And we actually splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico at night. I think it was about 2:30 in the morning or something like that. We hadn't done that since 1968 with Apollo 8. That was the last time we had a splashdown at night. But that brought our mission, I guess the space phase of our mission, to a close, because once you get back down on Earth, you still have a lot of work to do. In fact, within hours of us getting out of the capsule, and here you can see that video of the rescue crew, or the picture of the rescue crews with our capsule in the water. Within hours of us getting out of that capsule, we're having to do experiments.
We are.
Where we're the test subjects. And so because they want to get as much information out of us as they can before we readapt to this 1G environment that we're in right now. And so, again, the mission, even though you've splashed down, it doesn't stop. And you're continuing to debrief, you're continuing to do medical experiments, and you have to do rehabilitation. because all of us are a little bit wobbly when we get back. You feel a little heavy when you get back, but we've got some great astronaut strength and conditioning and rehabilitation specialists that do a wonderful job helping get us back into shape.
Yeah.
To where we can stand up here today.
Yes.
And so I think that's kind of the mission in a nutshell, but what we'd really like to do now is answer some of their questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
You all make being an astronaut sound extremely, extremely fun. I think I'm going to apply, but
Oh, come on.
Good
We
luck.
need
Yeah,
good
we're waiting.
people.
Good luck.
Come on over.
I'm scared of heights, so that's not going to happen.
Let's talk.
So before we get into questions with the audience, we're going to listen to a brief video from Victor about teamwork.
Sure it is.
Hi, I'm NASA astronaut Victor Glover. I have always been a part of a team. Whether it was my time on the college wrestling and football teams at Cal Poly or during my time in the Navy, working together as a team and supporting one another allows us to be better, to go further, and accomplish more than we could do alone. I believe that the same teamwork used by us at NASA to investigate extreme weather and to help unlock the secrets of the universe can be used to solve our most pressing issues here on Earth. If we hope to solve humanity's most important problems, we must work together. We need each other. Just as our society today is built on the work done in the past by people like Frederick Douglass, Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, John Lewis, and many others, our mission builds on the work of other astronauts, engineers, and scientists that have come before us, including Katherine Johnson, Mary Jackson, Dorothy Vaughan, Charlie Bolden, Alvin Drew, and Mae Jemison. They and many others have paved the way for us to work and live in space. We hope to continue their legacy. It will take all of us exploring, learning, and sharing to create a better future for humanity. Let's explore together.
So it is time for questions now, and we have over 400 questions that have already been submitted. And if you have more questions to submit, please put them into the comment section, and we will do our best to get to them. And also, let us know where you're watching from, just like some other folks,
Yes, no.
such as Miss Ron's class from Will Rogers Junior High in Claremore, Oklahoma, Miss Lindano's class from Alma Martinez Intermediate School, Miss Chrissy's class from Lincoln Middle School in Oakland, Oregon, Miss Eschbach's class at Tremont Elementary in Columbus, Ohio. So now it is time for the first question, and it comes from Carlos from Miss Crawford in the after-school program at Bunker Hill Elementary in Washington, D.C. How long does it take to prepare to go into space, and how do you prepare?
So, Carlos, you actually, from the minute you show up as selected as an astronaut candidate, you start preparing to go into space. And so that candidate training period is going to last a couple of years, and you're going to get the introduction into the doing a spacewalk. You're going to get an introduction into how you operate the robotic arm and all of the systems on board the International Space Station. You're going to start learning Russian language because we are an International Space Station, and so the language is an important part of that. And then at the end of that, once you finish that initial candidate school, you're now eligible for assignment. And I think you heard me in the introduction say that once you do get assigned, then it's usually anywhere from 2 years to a year and a half that you're preparing before your actual flight. Sometimes you're repeating a lot of those same types of classes that you did before, but now you're getting very specific into what you might be doing when you're on board the International Space Station. So, for example, I showed up in 2009 and I did my basic training, which was 2 years. I got assigned right away, and I flew 2 years later. So it took 4 years of school before I launched into space my first time.
Okay, thank you. So the next question comes from Lillian from Dr. Taylor's class from Hawthorne Elementary in Boise, Idaho. What type of languages do you have to learn to work as a team on the ISS?
Yeah, so Hopper already answered that. So the official language on the space station is English, but we also do learn the Russian language because sometimes we fly with the Russians. My first flight, I flew on the Soyuz spacecraft, and so I had to do everything in Russian. Thankfully, our training, most of it is in English, unless you're over in Russia, then it's in Russian. And of course, Soichi speaks several languages because his native language is Japanese, but he had to learn English, he had to learn Russian, so lots of languages.
All right, we're going to do some shout outs really quickly before we continue on. We have Miss Braunbell's class at Northview Elementary, Miss Irving's class at M.E. Pearson Elementary School in Kansas City, Kansas, the Sully Propel Club, and Oakdale Public School in Edmond, Oklahoma. Now, this next question is going for Soichi. What are the benefits of working with a multicultural and multinational crew on the space station?
Well, thank you. That's a good question. We believe this international friendship is the key to bring the station forward, meaning that that we have a different background, different ethnical aspect, and of course, we're all different. So diversity is the key, and diversity inclusion give us the strength as a team. We name our capsule resilience. Is here. Resilience meaning obviously the strength to overcome the obstacle, and obviously 2020 and 2021 is tough year because of this COVID. Everybody is suffering, but we can bounce back. We can fight this hard circumstances. Same thing in the space station. This diversity and inclusion give us a strength, and international friendship is probably the best tool to focus those important aspects of resilience in teamwork.
Great. That was a good picture.
Thank you. Up next, we have Valentina from Miss Little's class at Visitation School. She says, how do you keep a concept of time in space?
So Shannon actually mentioned in our introduction that we have to choose a time zone since we have flight control, mission control centers all over the planet. We pick one standard to use, and we actually choose Greenwich Mean Time or Universal Time. And so if you wanted to look it up on your computer, it's what time it is in London, England. And so that's the time that we all synchronize to, meaning every center that's, one is in Houston, one is in Huntsville, one is in Tsukuba City, Japan, near Tokyo. And so we're all off of our local time a bit, so we're all having to adjust. But we choose Greenwich Mean Time because it's a good compromise between those partners all around the globe.
Thank you for that. For the next question, we have a really big shout out. On top of the people we have tuning in from the US, we also have people tuning in from Brazil and Ukraine, which is very cool.
Good.
Way out there.
Yeah.
So Natalie says, what happens when things break?
When things break, we have to fix them. A lot of what we do on the space station is maintenance. We want to make sure things work when we need them to work, so we do what we call preventative maintenance. It's like changing the oil on your car. You got to keep your car running. But if they break, we got to figure out, with the help of the ground, how we're going to fix it. And hopefully we've got the tools and materials on station to do so.
So this is a follow-up. What is the most challenging thing to fix that you had to fix?
CEDRA. So yeah, CEDRA is an acronym short for our carbon dioxide removal system or assembly, and it's really complicated to work on.
Very important too. So
Yes, very important. We need that to work.
So Ian from Miss Braunbell's class at Northview Elementary says, how do you control your floating with the lack of gravity?
Great question. So as the first time flyer on the crew, those first couple of weeks for me were the first time I had lived in weightlessness. And so let's just say I bumped into things all the time. I would go around a corner and swing and hit my feet on the hatch or the handrail. And so you just have to take your time. Soichi says it all the time. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And so you just give yourself time to get used to it. And it's amazing, your body adjusts and you just learn to move a little more elegantly, a little more gracefully in space. And then you get to the point where you can go from one end of a module all the way to the other end without actually having to crawl the whole way. You can just push lightly and go exactly where you're aiming. But that's advanced space flying. Or you could even do a little bit of a roll and still get where you're going. So you learn to have fun with it too, but it takes time and practice.
So do you get any motion sickness or anything while you're up there and being weightless?
You know, it's a possibility. I was very lucky that I didn't experience any, and so from the very beginning, I got on station and it was just fun. I really enjoyed being upside down compared to, my room was in the ceiling, what you would call the ceiling, we call the overhead. And so since I went to bed and woke up every morning and the space station was upside down, I would just stay upside down for a good part of, most days, and I really enjoyed it.
Just because you can.
You never get to do that again, so
Right.
I
Do
really
it.
enjoyed it while I could.
Awesome. So Toby from Miss Ron's class from Will Rogers Junior High asks, we grew radishes in class hydroponically, and they were pretty spicy.
Yep.
Did you grow food in space, and did it taste different?
Did we grow food in space?
Yes, we did.
Toby, we grew a lot of food in space.
Including radishes.
Including radishes.
Yes.
And it's interesting in space though, as we're growing these different plants. So we had lettuce, we had wasabi, pak choy, kale on board, and radishes on board, and basil, I think.
Yeah,
we had
basil.
some basil on board as well. And so as we're growing those foods, a lot of times it's part of an experiment. And what that means is when it has matured and you're ready to harvest it, well, the scientists on the ground, they want some of that, right? And
They
we
want
want some
all
of
of
it
it,
as
too.
well
We
for
wanna eat it.
consumption.
We
And
wanna eat
so fortunately, a lot of what we grew, there was enough for the scientists that they could do the analysis that they wanted on it, and there was enough for us to consume once in a while. And so the radishes, Toby, I gotta tell you, I normally don't eat radishes down here on Earth. But up in space, the radishes were fantastic. It was great to have something fresh like that. That crunch really just added something to the meals in space.
I think 2020 and 2021 turned a lot of people into gardeners and
Yes,
farmers.
yes.
That's right.
So we have more shout outs. We have people in California, Ohio, Louisiana, Los Lunas, Mexico, and we even have viewers in Ghana.
Oh, cool.
Another one way out there.
Next question, Evan from Miss Coates' class at East Montgomery Elementary. What happens if there is a fire?
So, Evan, we have three main emergencies that we're worried about on board the International Space Station. One of them is a toxic atmosphere and ammonia, if that got in. Another one is a depress, so we start to have a leak. And then the third one is that fire. And fire in space is very dangerous because you can't just run outside to get away from it and call the fire department. And so definitely very concerned. And in fact, when we talked about that training, that astronaut school that we go through, one of the most important parts of that training is for these emergency situations like that. And so they'll actually put us in a mock-up of the space station, and we'll be spread out like we're doing our normal daily routine, and they'll start pumping fake smoke into the capsule. And we have to learn how to put on the emergency mask, get to our safe area, so moving towards our vehicle, and then responding to that fire, helping put it out, helping identify where it is, working very closely, if you're fortunate enough to have communication with the ground, working very closely with them to identify where it is, put it out, and then do part of the cleanup. And so it's something that we take very, very seriously on board the International Space Station, are those emergencies.
Okay. And so, Victor, I've heard that you have fire training as a naval aviator. How is that training different than what you had to do as an astronaut?
Well, I guess the biggest difference is, shipboard firefighting. It's the same, though. They want you to know those things very well before you actually go out on a ship. Because like a ship in space, a ship on the ocean, you can't just leave. Well, in the worst case, you could jump overboard, but you want to try to save the ship. So we all fight fires. Every sailor on a ship is also a fireman. And so I would say the biggest difference is when you go through shipboard firefighting training, they light a really big fire and you get to use a charged up hose, a hose with the pressure all the way up. And when it's that big around, it takes a team of several people to hold it steady and to control aiming it at the base of the fire so you can knock out one of the legs of the fire. Tetrahedron. I paid attention in that class.
Tetrahedron.
And so, yeah, the heat, that's the biggest difference, is we felt the heat in our firefighting training.
Okay. So Miss Reed's class from Indian River Middle School wants to know about how many countries are involved in the International Space Station.
Well, good question. We have, technically it's about 15 countries all around the world. We have United States, Russia, Canada, Japan, and European countries joined in one form called the European Space Agency. So 15 countries, a lot of, you can see this flag behind us. And each country send astronauts or cosmonauts. And once we get there, it's like one big family, regardless of the nationality, and work as one team.
Can you all say hello to the students in Russian?
Здравствуйте. Здравствуйте.
Thank you. Milton from Miss Irvin's class at M.E. Pearson Elementary School said, what does the inside of a rocket ship look like?
Depends on the rocket ship, I guess.
Yeah.
Some of them
So
look different.
we were in Crew Dragon, the one that we named Resilience, on top of a Falcon rocket. And if you've ever seen pictures of the inside of the Crew Dragon, it's a very sleek vehicle. A lot of white. The seats have black and dark gray carbon fiber accessories. And it is a very sleek, very clean look. And that's the only spacecraft that I've ever flown. And so that's what I'm used to. It's really nice. I really like those seats. But we have some crew members who have flown in other vehicles and can tell you what the inside of those look like.
Yeah, so one of the differences, I flew on a Soyuz rocket. Now, a Dragon rocket spacecraft will hold 4 crew members. The Soyuz holds 3 crew members, and it's a little bit smaller. And it was designed a long time ago, so it's not quite as sleek, but it still gets people to orbit just the same.
Most important.
Yeah, the first spacecraft I flew was American Space Shuttle, and we really like it. But if you see the photo, there's lots of switches. About 3,000 switches. We have to learn every single one of them. And compared to this nice SpaceX Dragon, has a nice big screen, like a touch screen, like you have on your smartphone or tablet. So you don't have to have all those switches every day. When you are going up, all we need is a rocket, and when you're coming down, all we care is with the parachute and safely landing on the right location. So every aspect of every phase has its own function, and that's what the SpaceX Dragon is really good, showing the right amount of information with the right amount of switches that we need for each phase.
So this is just a follow-up question. Are any of the rocket ships voice activated yet?
Not yet. Nope.
Nope.
Not unless you count the ground. We do talk to the ground, and they can send commands up, but not
That is
purely,
true. No,
not
that's a
purely
good
voice
point. That's a good
activated.
point.
Right.
All right. Miss Kinsey's class from Providence Elementary School, what do you do to keep busy during your downtime in space?
So I think, first of all, there's usually not a lot of downtime
We are
in
busy,
space.
busy
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the days, Shannon kind of alluded to it, you're up pretty early, and our days usually start at about 7 or 7:30, where we're officially on the timeline in terms of doing activities, whether it was the science or the maintenance or whatever. That usually lasted until about 7:30 at night, and so we were typically eating dinner between 7:30 and 8 o'clock every night. And so when that's finally done, you're talking 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and so you may go and you catch up on little emails. You may, of course, every night I called home to my family. I think probably all of us did that. You called home and just see how things were going on the ground. And then you would get those occasions where we had some free time. So Friday night for us was kind of our movie night while we were on board the station, and so that was nice to just kind of be able to relax for a couple hours. And so one of the things that's interesting when you are in space like that, you bring your cultures, the thing that you're used to doing up there with you a little bit, and that's nice because it helps you kind of feel connected to Earth even though you're a long way away.
Can I get each of you to tell me what your favorite movie was that you saw while on the ISS?
Boy.
Oh, wow,
I'd have to
that's
go.
That is
I'd have to go
tough.
Tenet.
tough. Okay, let's see. Okay, I really enjoyed Tenet because I think I watched it 5 times in space. However, we had a really unique event. We called down to a Navy ship. A good friend of mine was the executive officer of a Navy squadron on a carrier. And so we had like a joint movie night. We called it a Sea and Space Roll 'em. And so we watched, that was Spaceballs,
That was
right?
Spaceballs.
So we watched Spaceballs on the space station, and they watched Spaceballs on the ship, on the carrier. And I thought, and we called them on the phone and actually reached them. So that was a pretty special day. That made Spaceballs a much more special movie for me.
Hayden from Miss Mendel's class at Kearney Middle School says, how long after you leave Earth do you start to float?
Oh, great question, Hayden. And so For us, our ascent, after we launched from Kennedy Space Center, Florida, we were in orbit in less than 9 minutes. 9 minutes later, we had climbed 200 kilometers, crossed the Atlantic Ocean, and we were in weightlessness, and that's when we brought out our zero-G indicator, Grogu, or better known as Baby Yoda, and you'll see him floating around the cockpit there, and that's when we first experienced weightlessness. Less than 9 minutes. That's pretty amazing.
That is. Maggie from Mrs. Eschbach's class at Tremont Elementary. Oh, this is a good one. She says, I have 2 brothers, and I fight with them a lot. So I want to know if you ever fight with your fellow astronauts up on the International Space Station.
So Maggie, great question. Yeah. I think the easiest way to answer that is we are a family.
Yeah.
And so, I'll let you just kind of answer it from there. But you definitely feel it is your second family when you are in space, and I think we all feel very close with each other. And
mostly we get along.
And mostly we get along.
Mostly get along.
Mostly we get
Sometimes
along.
we're a little grumpy, but
You work through it. You work through it.
So Alexa and Aislinn from Miss Guerin's class at Encompass Heights Elementary says, what happens when you get sick in space?
What happens when you get sick? Well, one of the reasons that we typically don't get sick in space is because we go into quarantine before we launch. So we are separated from other people, we're separated from our families to make sure that we don't have any germs that we're taking with us to space station. However, part of our astronaut training is a bunch of medical training, so if anybody did get sick or got hurt, we would be able to take care of them. So we're pretty well prepared, but generally we just don't take germs up to space.
Okay. Aiden from Miss Norris's 7th grade science class in Greeley, Colorado asked, what mental preparation do you do before going on a mission?
It's a lot.
I think, so as the rookie in the crew, I spent a lot of time listening to their stories and the stories of a lot of people in our office. And I came up with this really short list of what I thought was maybe some of those ideas distilled. And so for me, what worked was I had these 3 things that I tried to do throughout the entire mission. It was to keep things simple, to keep things flexible, and to keep things low stress, because we were in a highly dynamic, isolated, confined, extreme environment. And so giving ourselves space to be our best selves was important. And so that's what I just tried to do, keep it simple, keep it flexible, and I think those 2 things helped you keep the stress low. And that, but I think what's important is figuring out whatever it is for you, taking some time to develop a system, develop those tools, because the other piece of it is when I got to space, I am usually an extrovert, love talking to people, listening to stories and interacting. That energizes me. In space, when I had a free moment, I wanted to be alone, write in my journal, read my book or my paper, and it's interesting. So you have to have those tools and the processes down so that you can use them in whatever combination you need when you get to space. Very good question.
So a follow-up to that one, do you all do any breathing techniques or mindfulness techniques in order to stay calm and stay centered while you're up there?
Not officially, but I think if anybody wants to do that on a personal level. The only other thing I would add that from a mental preparation is just the training that we go through, right? And so when you feel very prepared for some kind of activity, I think at least for me that helps on the mental side as well.
Okay. Mohammed from Miss Lindano's class at Alma Martinez Intermediate School says, why do we go to space when there are so many problems on Earth?
Yeah, that's
well. I think
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I think there's a lot of reasons to go to space. It's for the science, and it is to make things better on Earth. And it's true we have a lot of problems on Earth, but I also think as humans we can tackle a lot of things at the same time. And so we shouldn't just work on one problem. We can do a whole set of problems at once. And going to space is part of making Earth better.
Karsten from Oakdale Public School asks, is it hot in the spacesuit?
Can be.
Can be. Could also be really cold.
Can be cold too.
So, like when we go outside on the spacewalk, we actually have in a backpack when we're out on those spacewalks, we have the cooling system, the power, the oxygen that we need while we're outside, and we can actually control the temperature inside the suit. And so we have a dial here that allows us to make it hotter or colder, but probably the best way we control the temperature inside the suit is controlling how hard we work.
Yep.
And so if you start to feel yourself getting hot, that's a good indicator for us that, hey, I'm working a little too hard out here, I need to slow down, I need to calm down, and that's probably the most effective way of staying at a good temperature inside the suits.
Okay. So this question goes back a few questions, and it's related to how busy you all are. If there's one activity that you could do more of if you had the opportunity to do so, what would it be? I would like an answer from each person.
Okay,
please.
great.
Spend time to look outside and take pictures.
Taking pictures, looking outside, and pictures inside. Taking
Yes.
pictures.
Taking pictures.
Yes.
Yeah.
Taking pictures.
Well, I think I maybe take too much pictures, so I think something else. Because I'll probably talk more to my friends and family.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time, but you know, when you look back, and you know, I talk to my wife and kids every day. But you know, my old friends, I make maybe a couple of phone calls, and after coming back, and they still talk about, hey, remember that day you gave me a phone call, and then we still talk a lot about. So that gives them a good sense that, you know, we are connected in space to ground. So I should have done much more, just talking to my friends, old friends.
Soichi, this is a follow-up for you. So when you're traveling over certain parts of the world, different countries, different regions, if you see like a city, say, oh, that's LA, do you think about calling someone who's down in LA or making contact with people there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. When you see, you know, not just home country or hometown, if you pass by, say, Europe or Russia, wherever you know somebody down there, I want to make a call, so make a direct contact. Hey, I'm flying right over you. What are you doing? So that gives me a sense of, you know, belonging. I'm still belonging to Earth, and they watch us that time, and knowing that, you know, the space station is part of their life as well.
And so I know you can see Earth when you're going around, but how can the student see the International Space Station when it's traveling above?
Good question. I would recommend going to the NASA homepage, www.nasa.gov, and you can find article that where is the International Space Station. And even though, you know, even you can register your home address, and NASA is kind enough to send you the email. Hey, station is coming your hometown,
Yeah.
your town this day.
Yeah.
Look this direction at this time. So try that.
Yeah.
Great.
And I think it's important to note that you'll only see it at twilight or just the early morning when the space station is in the sunlight and the Earth is in the shadow.
Okay. Remember that, folks.
But it's awesome. You should definitely go do it. It is so awesome to see the space station go overhead. You will not miss it. Once you see it, you will not miss it.
That's really cool. So Kelsey from Miss Chrissy's class at Lincoln Middle School says, are spacesuits the same for men and women?
Depends on what country is building them. I think generally the spacesuits are the same. So SpaceX designs the suits and builds them individually for each person. So my spacesuit fit me, it would not fit Victor. But and Russia does that as well. They would build your spacesuit to fit you. The basic design is the same. It's going to operate the same, but it's going to fit the individual person. In the shuttle days, they did not have suits built for the individual person. They had different sizes of suits, and so you would just get the one that was close to your size.
Okay. Mike, so you mentioned that you can change the temperature inside of the suit. What is inside of the suit that allows you to change the temperature?
So I'm talking about the what we use for the spacewalks, that particular suit, the EMU.
That previous picture
Yeah, and there
back
was a picture that came up of those EMUs. And so actually when you are, before you put the suit on, you put on, it's kind of like long underwear, and through that long underwear are these tubes running back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, you
And yeah, and that's actually what you can see on Victor and I right there is that long underwear, and those tubes, you can kind of see them there. And what's happening is water is running through there, and that water is helping to cool you. And so when you adjust that, all you're really doing is adjusting how much water is flowing through that cooling garment.
Yep.
And so less water flowing, you're going to get warmer, and more, you're going to get cooler.
All right. Carlos and Alicia from Bunker Hill Elementary After School Program ask, How has COVID-19 affected your job?
You know, the pandemic, came in full strength. I mean, it was around, and we were talking about it at the end of 2019, but at the beginning of 2020, we were still training. And so we had to figure out a way to continue to train, but also while being safe. And so we had to do a lot of thinking about how we can do so and be safe. And a lot of folks went into that thinking, well, how do we keep these astronauts safe? But we knew that we were going to interact with lots of different people. We would see the NASA folks, then we would go the next week and see the SpaceX folks, and we didn't want to be the carrier getting both of those groups sick potentially. And so we were also thinking about how to protect all of the ground trainers
team.
and the flight controllers that we were going to interact with. And so we had to think about it. We had to come up with some practices, and both sides did. NASA and SpaceX came up with ways for us to continue to train and eventually even launch, because the pandemic is still going, and it was going when we launched. But even prior to that, we actually launched the Demonstration 2 mission, Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken, the test mission that made Crew-1 possible. And we did all of that while we were in the pandemic. So it made us stop and think and make sure that we were doing things safely and in a hygienic way.
Okay. Keely from Miss Jackson's class at Buffalo Trail Elementary says, do you see other spaceships or satellites while in space?
Oh,
Not really.
I didn't see any.
Well, Katie, thanks for the questions. I remember that's a very precious chance that when the Russian launched a new cargo ship, the supply ship, I was able to just fly right over the rocket launch pad and take a picture. So you see the plumes and you see the rocket go up. And so the short answer, yes, but you have to be really, really lucky to find the right time, right direction, and right technique to take a picture.
And just how fast are you all traveling while you're in the ISS?
It's 8 kilometers per second.
So 17,500 miles an hour,
500 per second. So it's really fast.
30,000
Faster than the
kilometers
speed
an
limit.
hour.
Faster, yeah, definitely bust the speed limit.
Wyatt from Miss Ron's class at Will Rogers High School says, how often do you get to talk to your family?
Yeah, every day. I think probably all of us would call home every day, which is absolutely amazing when you really think about it. And in fact, at the time of this mission, I had 2 sons in college, so I was calling each one of them every day as well. So, and I'm guessing that was the same for everybody.
Maddie from Miss Coates' class at East Montgomery Elementary asks, how can 3D printing impact the work on the space station?
Oh, wow. Someone asked earlier about what happens when things break. And one of the important parts that Shannon mentioned was, we fix it if we can, if we have the parts on the space station. And so 3D printing is actually, additive manufacturing as a whole has really advanced, and it's going to continue, and eventually it will get to the point where we may be able to even make tools real time. If we needed a specific tool, we might be able to print it up, or a part that we didn't have. The ground could send up the drawing, and the computer could turn it into a design, and we could print it real time. So maybe we'll even be able to fix things when we don't have the repair part on the space station. That's just one application, and there could be several others.
And we do have a 3D printer on the orbit that we are starting to work with to figure out how to do these things. Yep.
That's so awesome. I've always wanted a 3D printer.
Oh, me too.
And weightlessness.
In weightlessness, yeah.
This question comes from Miss Reed's class at Indian River Middle School. Why are there so many possible landing locations when you're returning from space?
Well, one reason, there are so many landing locations because orbital mechanics allows us to pass over different parts of the Earth. That's one piece, and then also the vehicle has a propulsion and steering, a guidance system that allows us to turn a little bit and land in a different location. So because of orbital mechanics and the vehicle's propulsion system, that gives us the ability to target where we're going to land. One of the reasons that's important to us is because when we come home, like Mike said, on May 2nd, we undocked and we landed on Earth in the ocean 6.5 hours later. If the weather had come in, right into that place that we were supposed to land, we could actually go to an alternate and maybe even in that same pass land in a different part. So we could have a primary in the Gulf and also have a backup or an alternate landing site in the North Atlantic or in the Atlantic Ocean. And so having multiple sites gives us flexibility.
Okay. Juliana from Miss Irvin's class at M.E. Pearson Elementary School says, how do you change clothes when you are in space?
It's a little bit easier in space. When you like change your pants, you can just float and put your pants on all at once as opposed to one leg at a time. But you gotta do it carefully too, so your clothes don't float away while you're trying to change your clothes.
And this is the final question that we have, and it comes from Andrew from Mrs. Mendel's class at Kearney Middle School. What things are hard to do on the ISS that we take for granted on Earth?
So, Andrew, I love that question. And on my first mission, I flew with an astronaut, Rick Mastracchio. And Rick described space. He said it makes the impossible possible. And what do we mean by that? It means that one of us could single-handedly handle a refrigerator-size piece of equipment on board, all by yourself. Move it around, install it. But at the same time, it makes the simple things very, very difficult. And so the little things that we take for granted down here on Earth all of a sudden become much more challenging. It's something just as simple as brushing your teeth at night. And if you think about it, you've got your sink, and you brush your teeth, and you get the toothpaste in there, and you spit it out in the sink, and you run a little water. Well, you don't have a running water sink up there, and so what do you do with the toothpaste after you're done brushing your teeth? And so it's little challenges like that, just to do the day-to-day things that we're used to down here on Earth, become much, much more difficult in space.
All right, I have to do this follow-up. What are some things you can do in space that you cannot do here on Earth?
Float through
Fly
the
like
module
Superman.
and just be off the ground for an extended period of time. And that's just really amazing. And be in any orientation on Earth. If I was to do a handstand right now, it would, be upside down, but the gravity vector would still be pulling the blood to my head, right? There's always the force of gravity. And in orbit, you're essentially in constant free fall, so everything is falling at the same rate, which produces weightlessness. And so I could turn upside down and, have my head towards Shannon's feet and have a conversation with her, and as strange as it would look, we would both feel the same. Neither one of us would have blood rushing to our head. And that's a really neat place to be. That's really cool.
It sounds like it. So I think we have time for just another question, but this one goes to everybody, so I need a response from everyone here. What was the first meal you wanted to eat when you splashed down?
I wanted a big fresh salad. I miss my fresh vegetables.
Radishes?
Radishes, sure. Put them on.
I think it was a salad as well, something fresh, a salad. I had a big salad as well.
For me, it was the fresh fruit or something that was recently prepared, because a lot of the food that we eat on board was cooked years ago, packaged, then sent up on station and stored, and then you finally heat it up and eat it. And it's good. I mean, the food is good, it's tasty, but it's nice to have that meal that comes right out of the kitchen, right onto your plate, and right into your mouth. And so just something that was freshly prepared was something I was definitely looking forward to.
Sparkling water.
Sparkling water.
Because we don't have it in space, actually. There's no bubbly water for 6 months because of the safety reason, because it's high pressure. And if you open it in space, it goes everywhere. The computers and the science equipment, so there's no bubbly water. So enjoy the sparkling water, boys and girls.
So the questions from the students are my favorite part of this show, but your answers are right up there with it. This was a lot of fun. So SpaceX Crew-1, I want to say thank you on behalf of the National Air and Space Museum, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, to all the boys and girls that are out there watching us. Thank you for coming here, speaking with us, and sharing information about your flight. And then to all of the students, parents, teachers, and space enthusiasts out there, thank you for joining us and coming with us to help us celebrate Crew-1's successful mission and safe return to Earth. Now, before we go, we have one last thing to do for all of the students that were on camera with us. We're going to do a virtual selfie. So, astronauts, come with me. Students on camera.
Chelsea.
Chelsea.
Say cheese.
Cheese.
All right.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. That was awesome. That was awesome.